So right now, July 2024, which is the best value for money Scarlet and Violet booster box between Temporal Forces and Paldea Evolved. Welcome back to the Chase Card, everyone. Today is the first time ever I'm doing a video on Scarlet and Violet era booster boxes. In the past, I tend to focus on the Sword and Shield era and sometimes the Sun and Moon era. But you know, we are halfway through the Scarlet and Violet era now. I need to start digging in, guys, and crunching the numbers. Now, Paldea Evolved is probably my favorite set personally from the Scarlet and Violet era, but I have to take an unbiased look at how it compares to Temporal Forces. So today we're going to look at those two sets, Temporal Forces versus Paldea Evolved. Now, you guys know how I like to do this. I like to use my formula and work out the total value of the top 10 chase cards from each set and give each set a percentage value relative to the purchase price of the booster box to try to determine which one of those is absolute best value for money. Let's just get straight into it. Hey guys, getting straight into it, the number one chase card from Temporal Forces, this Raging Bolt EX Special Illustration Rare, currently selling for $82. Now this card, back in late May, about 5.5 weeks ago, $104. It's dropped off about 20% or so, down to $82. The number one chase card from Temporal Forces. So now how does that stack up against the number one chase card from Paldea Evolved? Let's take a look. The Magikarp from Paldea Evolved, the number one chase card, $129, raw, ungraded. These are all US prices as usual, guys. Now this card is such a sought after card. It's a beautiful card. Everyone wants this card. And it's almost $50 more than the number one chase card from Temporal Forces. So far between these two sets, Paldea Evolved starting quite strong, right? If we go back 3 months ago, it was $108, $106. Went up to $146 as recently as a couple of weeks ago. And there it is, sitting pretty around that $130 mark, guys. And at PSA 10, here's a recent sale on eBay of that Magikarp, $610 US in a PSA 10. So you've gone from $129 raw to $610 in a PSA 10. That is a huge markup. And that's really reflective in the fact that this card is so hard to grade in a PSA 10 if you are lucky enough to even pull it in the first place. That's why there's just such a huge markup from the raw to the PSA 10 version. Here's a recent sale on eBay of the Temporal Forces number one chase card in a PSA 10, $250 US for that Raging Bolt EX, 370 Australian dollars. Huge difference. $360 US more for the Magikarp for the number one chase card in Paldea. So again, so far, as we start this video, Paldea Evolved kicking Temporal Forces ass. But that's only one card. We've got a few more to get through. Like I said, we're going to go through the top 5 in detail. Okay? So be patient. Stick with me. If you haven't subscribed, bloody subscribe. What are you doing? Come on, guys. Support the channel. Thank you. Thank you in advance. Here's the Iron Crown EX. This is the number 2 chase card from Temporal Forces. $55 raw at the moment. This card 3 months ago was $87. God, it's been up and down a lot. $58 late May, back up to $83, you know, 2 weeks later in early to mid-June. Literally a month ago, it was $83. It's now down to $55, so it's dropped off a bit, but this thing is bouncing around all over the place. There it is, number 2 chase card from Temporal Forces, $55. Here's the Iono, the number 2 chase card from Paldea Evolved, $72, about $17 more for the number 2 chase card in Paldea Evolved. So far, Paldea Evolved winning again. Now this card's dropped off a little bit. It was $81 about a month ago. It's dropped off down to $72. It's lost about $9 in value in the last month. But over the long term, guys, those numbers are really insignificant. I think this is a really beautiful card. It's got that Pikachu there on the pancakes. It's a really nice trainer card. I like these Ionos in the Paldea Evolved set, but I want to keep my personal opinion out of it to a degree. I'll offer my opinion here and there, but I'll try not to be too biased. Let's just stick to the numbers, guys. So this card, $17 more than the number 2 chase card from Temporal Forces. Let's move on to the third most expensive card from each set. Here's the Walking Wake EX from Temporal Forces, okay? This is the third most expensive card from Temporal Forces, $46 for the Walking Wake Special Illustration Rare. 3 months ago it was $50, $51. Again, this thing's had a bit of a roller coaster ride, as a lot of these single cards do. In sort of mid-May, it dropped down from 50 to 37. It's back up to 40, 47. So almost $50 for the third most expensive card, $47. Here's the Paldea Evolved, $43 for the third most expensive card. Okay guys, so when it came to the top 2 chase cards, Paldea Evolved smashed Temporal Forces. But we get into the third most expensive chase card, and basically Temporal Forces starts catching up a little bit, right? This Raichu illustration rare, $43. To be fair, this thing's really performing well. 3 months ago it was $21. It's more than doubled in the last 3 months. So who knows how much higher this thing will climb. So these numbers can change really quickly, guys. You know, so the third most expensive card in Temporal Forces is literally about $4 more than the third most expensive card, its counterpart in Paldea Evolved. And that can change in a matter of like a week or even a few days. This Raichu could easily overtake the Walking Wake EX. Easily, guys. So the top 2 Paldea Evolved chase cards beat the top 2 Temporal Forces chase cards. The third, they're pretty close. The third in each set are pretty close. Let's get down to the fourth most expensive card now from Temporal Forces. Let's move through these. Here's the Iron Leaves EX from Temporal Forces, Special Illustration Rare. Again, I quite like this card. I like both of these sets, to be fair. I do lean toward Paldea Evolved as a personal preference of artworks that I like. I do lean towards Paldea. But these Temporal Forces cards, they are quite nice, I've got to be honest. It is quite a nice set. Iron Leaves EX, let's move on with the numbers. $41, right? 3 months ago, this thing was $46. It's now $41. It's very similar. It's dropped off a couple of dollars. It's dropped off $5 in 3 months. But over the last sort of 5 weeks or so, it's gone from 37 up to, it's up marginally. It's up like $4 in the last 5-6 weeks. But it's holding pretty steady around that $40 mark, right? $41. How does that compare to the fourth most expensive card from Paldea Evolved? Sorry guys, it's late. It's really late over here in Australia. It's like 2 a.m. when I'm filming this. My brain's starting to shut off. Here's the fourth most expensive card from Paldea Evolved. $34. So again, the fourth most expensive here from Temporal Forces, $41. The fourth most expensive here from Paldea, $34. About $7 less for the fourth most expensive card in Paldea Evolved. Now, again, these are not big differences. You're talking about $5, $6 here, $3 there, $7 there. These numbers can change so quickly. And again, the top 2 cards from Paldea Evolved absolutely smashed Temporal Forces. But here we are, the fourth most expensive card, and you start to see where these sets start to separate now. Okay? As much as I love Paldea Evolved, Temporal Forces seems to start pulling away here once we get sort of past the third chase card. So the fourth most expensive chase card from Paldea Evolved, losing to the fourth most expensive from Temporal Forces. Here's the fifth one. Here's the fifth one, guys. The Morty's Conviction. It's got that Gengar on it, that big Gengar. Now this has fallen away quite a lot. This card was $91 raw, ungraded, back in mid-April. We're now coming into mid-July soon. We're sort of early to mid-July. But mid-April, $91. It's now $39. It's less than half of the value of what it was 3 months ago, guys. Really dropped off. $39 for the fifth most expensive card from Temporal Forces. Here's the fifth most expensive card from Paldea Evolved. $29. Back in basically a month ago, this Chi-Yu EX was $40. It's now $29 a month later. So the fifth most expensive card from Paldea Evolved, $10 less than the fifth most expensive card from Temporal Forces. However, if I flick back again, this Morty's Conviction, look at it, it's just dropping. It's just gone off a cliff. And this Chi-Yu EX 3 months ago was $16 and is now $29. So this card's on the way up, Morty's Conviction is on the way down. So again, take this list take these numbers with a grain of salt, because these card prices are so volatile. They can just move around so much, guys. Now here, I wanted to quickly... I'm not going to go through all 10 chase cards in each set, but I wanted to give you a quick kind of summary of what's going on with the top 10 chase cards, because I'm about to get to the serious numbers on the best value for money booster box out of these two. Now, we saw the top 2 chase cards from Paldea Evolved beat in Temporal Forces, but after we got about 3 cards into each set, we started to see that the Temporal Forces cards are worth slightly more than Paldea Evolved. And if we look here, the top 6 chase cards here, this is all the Paldea Evolved top chase cards, right? The top 6 are all over $25. But once you get past the top 6, you get down to this Super Rod, you're down to $17, then Tinkerton, $16, $15 for this Iono, $15, $16 for this Iono. But the top 6 chase cards in Paldea, over $25, and then it really starts to drop away. Okay? Now if I flick here to the top chase cards, this is basically the top 12 chase cards in Temporal Forces. You can see here the top 6 chase cards, right? That Gougeon Fire, that's the 6th most expensive. That's $40. So the top 6 in Paldea Evolved were all over 25. The top 6 in Temporal Forces are all over 40. And if you go past the top 6, the next one's 27, 27, 26, 23. The top 9, 10, the top 11 chase cards are all over $21 in Temporal Forces. Whereas when we got down to the 7th most expensive card in Paldea Evolved, it was like $17. So minus those 2 top chase cards from Paldea Evolved, which destroy the Temporal Forces top 2 chase cards. After that, once you get further down the list, like the Temporal Forces just seems to have more depth. Now I'm not saying from a fun standpoint or a collector's standpoint that they're necessarily better cards, but the numbers are holding up a lot stronger when you get further down the list in Temporal Forces. And I hate to admit that, because I prefer Paldea Evolved. I prefer the cards in Paldea Evolved. I think they're a lot nicer. And it's just a personal opinion. It's just a personal preference. Let me know what you guys like in the comments, if you like any of these sets, which ones you prefer out of these two. But like the top 11 chase cards in Temporal Forces are all over $21, guys. That cannot be ignored. That's a really strong set. And again, it'd be interesting to come back in a few months, because this is still fairly new, a fairly new set still. It would be interesting to come back in a few months and see what these single card prices are doing, because I'd like to reevaluate this and see if Paldea Evolved has sort of caught up value-wise with the chase cards. But if I just flick to the numbers quickly, guys, you want the best value for money booster box out of these two? The best value for money booster box? I always bring receipts, guys. I always bring the numbers. Now the top 5 chase cards in Temporal Forces adds up to $265, right? The top 5 chase cards in Paldea Evolved actually beat that and add up to $309. So if I just looked at the top 5 chase cards from each set and the combined total value of those top 5, Paldea Evolved is a much stronger set. But unfortunately, I have to dig a bit deeper. And I have to look at the value of the top 10, the combined value of the top 10 chase cards from each set, guys. Because that's going to show the depth. And depth is so important with these sets. The bigger the depth, the better the set, I think, will do long term. So if we go to the top 10 chase cards, the top 10 chase cards from Paldea Evolved are $400. The top 10 chase cards from Temporal Forces are $410. We're talking about $10. Temporal Forces top 10 are worth $10 more. That can change in the space of a week or a few days. It would be nothing for the top 10 chase cards to drop $10 in total. These two are neck and neck. There is nothing in it. These two are neck and neck. But where there's a discrepancy is the Paldea Evolved booster box, being a little bit older, bit of an older set compared to Temporal Forces, has already started to move up in price. So the booster box is $127 for Paldea Evolved. The Temporal Forces booster box is $108. So now this creates the value proposition. This creates the discrepancy in the value proposition and gives one of these boxes a clear-cut, better value for money winner, which is Temporal Forces. At the moment. Now I say there's nothing in it, guys. There's nothing in it. But the top 10 chase cards adding up to $410 in Temporal Forces, and the booster box being $108, means that those 10 chase cards from Temporal Forces add up to 379% of the purchase price for the booster box. That is a really strong set. That's a huge percentage, guys. The top 10 chase cards for Paldea Evolved being $400 versus the booster box being $127 means that the top 10 chase cards in Paldea Evolved adds up to 314% of the purchase price of the booster box. So those percentages again: Temporal Forces 379%, Paldea Evolved 314%. Temporal Forces winning because the Paldea Evolved booster box price has already started to move. Now, if you're watching this video in Australia, we can still get the Paldea Evolved booster box at the exact same price over here as the Temporal Forces booster box. So I'd say if you're watching this video from Australia, to say that the Temporal Forces booster box is a better value for money, it's so marginal. It's like splitting hairs. Personally, I'm picking up the Paldea Evolved in front of Temporal Forces just because I like the cards in it and the value proposition is very similar. But I will start accumulating Temporal Forces very soon, and I think the depth of that over the long term is really going to separate the two. But in Australia, which one's best value for money? Temporal Forces marginally, though there's nothing in it. But in America, where the Paldea Evolved booster box price has already started to move north, I got to say the Temporal Forces booster box right now, early July 2024, the Temporal Forces booster box in the States is better value for money. Again, that can change in 3 months, 6 months time, but right now I have to give you an answer. Temporal Forces is the winner, by that much. But hey, buy what you love, buy what you like to collect, buy what you think is going to be the most fun to open. We're talking about sealed investment products. I got to trust the numbers, I got to trust the data, and Temporal Forces is coming out slightly in front of Paldea Evolved at the moment. Best value for money. Thanks for watching the chase card. Let me know in the comments out of these two if you like any, if you like both, if you like none, which one do you prefer, which one are you investing in. Leave your feedback in the comments. I always get back to you guys. Thank you for supporting the channel, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye everyone.